Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Victory Lane? Yeah, it's even better with Chumba by my side. Race to ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
If you work in university maintenance, Grainger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Grainger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more. And all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, visit Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I'm a nobody from nowhere that ain't never done nothing. That's what I am. An old head. These young coaches, I tell you what, I can't figure these jokers out. They got a backpack on and tight something. I don't know what they're doing. They're getting on my nerves, I can tell you that. I know what ain't in the backpack. A string and a let me paint that line for you. That ain't in there. That's for sure. I had a kid the other day. He said, "Hey, Coach, didn't Christopher Columbus write the Pledge of Allegiance?" I said, "He sure did. He also played quarterback for the 1985 Chicago Bears." He said, "Bet." That happened. Sun Coaches, Season 6, where coaches come and tell their stories. Some of them are funny. Some of them is going to help you in your coaching journey. Not everybody has a funny story, but everybody has a story. Hope you enjoy Sun Coaches, brought to you by Titan Sensor. Sun Coaches is proud to partner with Titan Sensor for Seasons 6 and 7. Titan is made in the USA, proudly founded and based in Texas. When you connect with Titan, you are not alone. You can collaborate and share templates with other coaches across the country to build reports and foster competition. Used by programs such as State 6A Georgia State champion Grayson High School, Titan can tailor a package to fit your needs. The eye in the sky never lies. Improve your team's performance with Titan. Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, and today I'm excited to be joined by the head coach of Central Carrollton Lions, Coach Umbrah Brown. Thanks for being on with me.
Man, I really appreciate you having me on, man. It's definitely a pleasure.
Well, Coach, just like I do all the time, I know people get tired of hearing me opening up that way, but where'd you grow up and go to school?
So I actually grew up here. You know, I grew up in Carrollton, Georgia, by way of Roopville, Georgia. A lot of people don't know where that's at, but super small town, you know, about 5 minutes toward Alabama from Carrollton. And like I said, I'm at my alma mater now, so I grew up walking these halls and being in this town. So it's been a pleasure coming back here. I played for Coach Randy Padgett. He was the head coach. When I went here, I graduated 2007. You know, he had came over my freshman year. I want to say it came from Carrollton. He'd worked with Ben Scott and that crew, and a couple of those guys that came over took this program over and played under him, and you know, met a lot of really good coaches. Really, you know, obviously made a lot of connections. Buddies of mine, that some that are on my staff now, and some that I'm pretty close with to this day. You know, Coach Birchfield, whose name is on just about every building on this campus. He coached my dad during that 86, 87 run they had back in the day. So I grew up hearing a lot of stories about, you know, Central in the 80s, you know, some that were probably, you know, a little fabricated, and some that were you know, the truth. But I grew up hearing about that you know, Lion pride and kind of what it was like. Coach Birchfield, actually, he had retired and came out of retirement, and you know, I'm not sure how long he did it, but he had taught me in PE and elementary when I went to Roopville Elementary. So I got a chance to know him growing up, and he was always attached to the program and got a chance to know him. So it was kind of surreal coming back home and being a part of this on this side of the fence, on the coaching side of the fence. But like I said, yeah, grew up in Carrollton, graduated 2007. And then, once I was, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated. All I knew was that I wanted to stay close to football. I wanted to stay attached to football. And so, I had, and I tell our kids this story all the time about how pride can get in the way of some things. And when I was young, I had 3 opportunities coming out of high school that were smaller schools that I had turned down. I had an opportunity to go to LaGrange College, who they were just now sort of starting up around that time, if you remember. And I want to say they may have been NAIA. I'm not 100% on that, but I know they were a smaller school at the time. I know Shorter was another school that was a small school that I had an opportunity to go play at. And then Faulkner University in Alabama was a school that really wanted me to come play. And I turned all 3 of them down like a fool. And, I had some buddies that went and played D2 ball that, it kind of pumped my head up and told me, man, I could go and play. And so I decided to bet on myself and go try that walk-on life. And I went to Valdosta State, enrolled at Valdosta State, and training with a lot of the guys. I had some roommates that were football players there, and we were working out, training. I was getting my hopes up, and look, I knew I was in trouble when they started the walk-on process, and they had a huge meeting. Everybody that wanted to sign up and get a chance to come walk on, and we walk in there, and they're literally taking your name, your what year you're in, and your height and weight, and said they'd get back with you. I knew I was in trouble then because I was not, I was an undersized receiver, DB in high school, and like I said, man, really felt like I could do it, and it just wasn't in the plans for me. God didn't have it in the plan for me, and so as soon as once I kind of saw the writing on the wall there, I was like, man, what am I going to do with myself? So decided to transfer, come back home to West Georgia, and start trying to see what opportunities there were, there, and really in coaching and just being around ball in general. And so I got a chance to meet some people that worked at the rec up here and worked at the school up here. That's kind of when I developed a relationship with Coach Zachary, who was the head coach here at the time. And I met some really good people. And so, long story short, man, graduated 2012 from West Georgia. And I did all of my student teaching and all of my practicum work in that Paulding County area. Because at the time, that's where me and my wife, who was my fiance at the time, we had a little townhouse in Hiram, in downtown Hiram. And I did a lot of student teaching out there. And luckily, man, I guess somebody thought highly of me, to where when I graduated, I was able to get a job. And let me back up a little bit. So I didn't get a job right away. I graduated in 2012 and didn't really have a job, and decided to get into retail management of all things. I was a manager for like maybe 2 weeks before I got a call back from a school. It was an elementary PE job. And of course I took it and, try to put some fillers out on who was looking for coaches and who needed some coaches. And, I just wanted to be around ball. That's all I knew. I didn't know how I was going to do it, where I was going to go, but I knew I wanted to be around ball. And there was a lady I worked with at the elementary school named Yvette Adams. And she was one of the other PE teachers. We had 3 PE teachers total. I was the third one. She knew somebody by the name of Tommy Rogers, who was an assistant coach at Hiram under Andy Dorsey, son of Jimmy Dorsey. And so I went, interviewed, sat down with him. She connected those dots for me, and I was able to meet Tommy, and then Tommy introduced me to Andy, and then we sat down, and this was around probably June, July-ish. Told me that he'd love to have me on, and he hired me to be his DB coach, and assist went to strength and conditioning of the program, and we was off and running from there.
Well, you played for a legend. I got the honor to coach with Coach Padgett at Villa Rica, and he's one of my favorite humans ever. He was a hard-nosed joker and didn't play the radio, but man, what a great coach.
No doubt. Him, David Rooks, Brad Campbell, Chad Blevins, Billy Carnes. Like, I look back, one of my biggest regrets is that, man, I didn't pay enough attention in high school to the logistical things of coaching. When
we're that age, we don't.
Right. I was so locked into playing and not trying to get on the bear crawl list that I really wasn't focused on, that stuff. But I definitely, it was cool when I got this job. Because me and his son graduated, Kyle, and we had talked a good bit. They come to our golf tournament every year. Well, Kyle does, and being able to connect with Coach Padgett, talk with him. You hit it on the head. He was definitely hard-nosed, different. There were some things that I could probably say on here that was said and done back then that I'd be looking for a job if I did it today, for sure.
Yeah, I was at Lithia Springs when you were in high school with Isaac Farrell. I was his defensive coordinator then, so I remember that area when Padge was at Central, and then in that whole area up there. I mean, there's just great coaches in that whole area and great ball.
Right.
Douglas County, Carroll County, and that whole, and then you got Noonan ain't far away. LaGrange is right there, and of course you got all the South Fulton and Cobb areas all right there together. But I mean, just growing up in that area, that's awesome. So you start off at Hiram with Coach Dorsey.
Yep. So by the way, you talk about this area. Like I fell in love with high school football when I was an eighth grader and went and watched that LaGrange team back then. You talking about splitting people in half and just playing a different brand of ball. I mean, I remember looking at them thinking, this is it. This is what it's all about. So they kind of, made me fall in love with high school football in general. So you definitely right about this area. But yeah, so I spent my first 7 years of my career at Hiram. Had a chance to work with some really good people. That's where I met, a guy that I'll consider one of my mentors and somebody that's meant a lot to me, and Chris Brown. He was the DC at the time when I got on at Hiram and worked for Coach Dorsey. And
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Another checkered flag for the books. Time to celebrate with Chumba. Jump in at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
That was Andy's. That was Coach Dorsey's last year. I worked with him for a year, and then he informed us, after that year that he was getting into admin, and that Coach Brown, Chris Brown, was going to take the program over. And so got a chance to work with him for 6 years. And like I said, man, he kind of took me under his wing. He was the first guy, in the coaching aspect that saw something in me that I don't even know if I saw in myself, to be just totally honest. I was just a young gung-ho guy. You got to think now, that's back in some of the young buck coaches, and I know I'm young, but some of the super young guys that don't know anything about painting the field and carrying the stencil, popping the lines, cleaning all that stuff up and doing all that after a long day of practice. And like, those were the days that I kind of, got ushered in and kind of saw like, what is going on? I'm completely clueless to that side of things. And Coach Brown kind of took me under his wing, kind of showed me all that stuff and how to, make yourself unfireable, by being available and always doing things and always, taking the initiative to get something done, not just because somebody told you to do it, like that was kind of how we worked back then. Now, we were not as good, but we worked really hard, and he kind of showed me what this business is about from this side of things. And like I said, really, he was the first person to tell me that basically put the belief in me that I could be a head coach one day. And again, I'm in year 2 and I'm still, wet behind the ears and I'm just swimming, but he saw that belief in me. So again, that's also where I met a close coaching buddy of mine by the name of Trent Thompson. His mom was actually my supervising professor when I was at West Georgia. So we kind of connected there, and he was somebody that I grew close with. And, and I could probably name off a ton of guys during my tenure at Hiram. Andy Scott is another guy that I attribute kind of my defensive mentality to. He used to always say, solve all problems with aggression, so I remember going through there, learning kind of the ins and outs of how he does what he does and getting connected with him. Funny story. So when I was at Hiram, we coached a kid named Christian Taylor, who was the grandson of Lawrence Taylor, the Lawrence Taylor. And so we would always, say things and, tell jokes and, little one-liners to him about his granddad and stuff like that. Not ever thinking we'd get a chance to meet him or that he would come to a game or whatever. Well, one day, we're getting ready for a JV game, and Christian comes walking in. He was a JV kid, a big, long, tall kid. He comes walking in and tells us that, hey, my granddad's going to be at the game today. And so all of us are sitting around the coach's table like guys do before a JV game. And we're like, okay, Christian, we hear you, and so, we're getting ready to warm up. And so I'm looking for him. I'm like, man, this is arguably the greatest football player of all time. And so I'm looking for him. I don't see him. So anyway, we start the game, and about halfway through the first quarter, at the time I was calling defense at the JV level. So I'm sitting there, I'm calling defense. We're in the middle of a game. I can't remember who we were playing. And I look over, and standing in between the tick marks and the numbers is Lawrence Taylor. He's come out of the crowd, and he's coaching his grandson. And we're like, are you kidding me? He's literally standing right next to me. And the referees are running into him, having to walk around him, but look, nobody's saying a word to him. Like, who's going to tell LT to get out of the way,
That's awesome.
It was surreal, man. But that's just one of the many, just crazy, experiences and stories, man, through those Hiram years. Got a chance to coach some really good kids. And I'll say this too, and I didn't mention this at the beginning. I think it's super important for me to mention this. And most coaches will attest to this. Throughout this journey, there's been a few things that have just been huge factors in kind of, this walk that is the coaching profession. That's obviously my wife. Most guys listening and most guys that coach and have a significant other or wife will tell you, that lady's got to be a trooper. And my wife has been a trooper. She's held the fort down. She has supported me, been along the journey with me. We went to college together. So she has been awesome. I couldn't continue no more without mentioning that. And then, obviously the coaches and the players that I've been able to work with, and, whether I'm, used to coach them or used to work with them, or whether those are the guys I coach now and the guys that's on my staff now, I can tell you this, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for those three huge factors. But like I said, man, I got a chance to work with some really good kids there. And then fast forward, after year 8, after year 7, I had to make a decision. I'd got an offer to come be the defensive coordinator for Kevin Whitley at New Manchester. He was leaving Stockbridge, and he was going to take over that New Manchester program, try to get it turned around. I think he was just at a point of his career where I think he was ready for a change. And, I had always admired Coach Whitley from afar. I had knew some guys over the years that had either worked with him or knew him. And so I was able to get connected through that. And he interviewed me, and I was able to get he was the first person to give me a chance at being a coordinator. And so he hires me. And so I leave Hiram, and Coach Whitley's there from January. He comes in July after the dead week and calls for an impromptu meeting at 7:30. And everybody knows, like, if you're a coach, you know, if the head coach calls for an impromptu early meeting, it only really means one of a couple of things. So, you know, so I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on? You know, and he informs us that he's going to, you know, take the cornerback's job at Georgia Southern, his alma mater. And so, of course, I'm like, man, you got to take that. We had that long talk about it, and he was, you know, obviously felt bad at bringing me on and then leaving. But again, I kind of didn't look at it that way. I was just appreciative to be where I was at, and we were going to keep it rolling. And Cedric Jackson was named the head coach. He'd been the longest tenured guy there, and plus, I think he was probably the only guy that was ready for it at the time. So he was the interim, and so I spent 1 year there and finished out everything there. My 6 months with Coach Whitley, man, I learned so much just from how to be consistent, you know, how to really manage things from a logistical standpoint. Obviously, you know, how to come in and install and run a room and run a unit. Just football acumen in general. Like, I'm telling you, man, my 6 months with him, you know, I probably learned more in those 6 months than I did probably the 7 years prior, but it was well worth it. And then when I finished the year out there, that was a great experience too. You know, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. We, you know, that was back in the day where I say back in the day, that was, you know, we didn't have a trainer. So when a kid would come off, I remember one time a kid came off, broke his wrist is dangling, and then he comes walking over to me, and I'm like, buddy, I don't know. Like, I'm looking around, so we had to we literally had to call the parent to come out of the stands. You know, just stuff like that, man, that you look back on, you're like, it makes you appreciate what you have now.
Right.
I guess is my whole point of even saying that. But anyway, so was there for a year, and then got a chance to go back to the Paulding County area and work for Coach Spence. Van Spence. He was the head coach at Paulding County at the time, and he was looking for a defensive coordinator. And one of my buddies, I was telling you about Coach Thompson. He was there on that staff at the time, and kind of connected me with him. And long story short, he hired me to be his DC. So I was there for 2 years. That's where I met my current OC at the time as well, Coach Ballou. You talk about like two phenomenal coaches, two guys that understand how the game needs to be played and understand how to work and how to connect with kids and all that stuff. And Coach Thompson and Coach Ballou, but we were on the staff together. So fast forward 2 years, I'm the DC there. Coach Spence steps down, and we're kind of looking like, man, what, you know, we had 23 seniors coming, you know, rising seniors, and felt like we could really be good if we just kind of tighten up some screws and bolts and do some things a little bit different. But we had some great kids there. And one thing about Coach Spence, man, he was very organized, and that's kind of where I learned how to be super organized with things. And so I felt like this could be a good situation, even though, you know, the school didn't have a huge history of winning. They had a couple winning seasons kind of in spurts. A couple really good players come through there. But look, man, I wasn't worried about any of that. You know, I was worried about those 23 seniors and what was going to happen. And so me and Coach Thompson, we had kind of interviewed for the job and was like, man, if one of us gets it, we just got to promise each other that the other one's going to stay. So, and we're going to try to get this thing turned around. And luckily, I was able to get the job, and that's exactly what we did. You know, we didn't have a astronomical year that 1 year there, but you know, we was able to go 6-5 and finish fourth in the region and make the playoffs, and that was kind of the big thing for those kids. You know, those kids at the time in that program had never been to the playoffs, and so we felt like, even though that was a year now, we was in there with Langston Hughes the year they won it. We was in there with Noonan and South Paulding was really good that year, and Alexander was pretty good. Like, so we were in a tough region, but we felt like we can have some success, and so we definitely did that and laid a good foundation, and was looking forward to building it, the right way, and make it something special. And that's when we were probably done with the season for maybe a month, and we got
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Another checkered flag for the books. Time to celebrate with Chumba. Jump in at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
put out in the first round that year at Rome. That's why I go to Barron Stadium, man. It's like flashback. We couldn't block them that night. Just could. I'm talking about we couldn't block them. So, but I say that to say, relatively speaking, like we had felt like we had a really good year and was going to keep it going. And that's when I got a call from our principal here at Central now, Kelly Edwards. He Mr. Edwards had been a teacher here and a coach here when I went here. And so, you don't really, I think every coach in this profession at one point in time, you think about what it would be like to go back home and go back to your alma mater and coach. Some guys do it, some guys don't, but I can promise you everybody's at least thought about it. And so I had always kind of paid attention to what was going on back home. Like I mentioned earlier, I had a pretty good relationship with Rico Smiley when he was here. He had coached my brother. As a matter of fact, Coach Chestnut was actually who coached my brother. Rico was the defensive coordinator at the time. So I was connected to the program, but not really. I had just kind of paid attention and kind of saw the change in Carroll County schools in general, and just the commitment to excellence and the resources and the facilities and how they were pouring into athletics and pouring into each school and kind of developing those quote unquote clusters, as they call it. And so, I didn't really know a ton about it, but I had kind of kept my ear open and kind of was always watching and supporting them from afar. It's probably more so just for the pride in me, never in a million years thinking that, I would come back and be the head coach here, and when Mr. Edwards called me, I obviously had to think about it. And as I mentioned before, God knew what he was doing, because we as we were talking, before it started, I have a son, a 6-year-old autistic kid who we were going to put in the special needs program here in Carroll County, regardless. Even when we were out in Paulding County, me and my wife were going to, bring my son Reagan here regardless. And so we were going through all the hoops and ladders of getting him ready to go start, school or whatever. And like I said, man, I get a phone call, a few weeks later, and I'm just like, wow. And so, like I said, man, fast forward, we, 2023, we kind of looking at the program from the outside looking in, there was talent, we felt like, that Coach Smiley did a great job of using the talent that he had. And I felt like, there were some things in place here to where this could be I always looked at a few things when you look at jobs. And one of the things is sustainable success. Is it somewhere you can go and build sustainable success? As you know as well as I do, Chris, that's not a common theme everywhere. As much as we like to think, we can come and fix whatever. Some things are a little bit. There's too many things out of place,
Yeah.
So
Some places are unfixable.
No doubt. You hate to say that, but I didn't want to go somewhere where I felt like, there wasn't a commitment to excellence from the top. So again, we had that. So we came in and had a small senior class that first year, but had some really good talent in the sophomore and junior class. And those few seniors we had, we felt like there were some really good kids, really good players in that class that could kind of, if they would buy in to what we were trying to do, it's like, man, we might be pretty decent in the first year. Not that was kind of what we were going in, like, oh, we got to be good. It was just, hey, we're going to go in, lay those foundational blocks and kind of see where it goes. And those kids, man, when I tell you, they ate up everything we fed them. I was, man, just taken back at how coachable and at how hard the kids worked. And, one of the big things for me is the weightlifting piece. That was kind of my background when I first started. And I promised myself that I would always, be in that weight room. As a matter of fact, that's one of the Andy Scott quotes, actually. I remember one day we were in there together and he looked at me and said, man, when you're a head coach, promise me that you'll always be in that weight room. I don't care how busy. I don't care what you got going on. Always be in that weight room. And so, I was already a weight room guy. So once I heard that, I'm like, okay, say no more. So I say that to say, when we got here, that was the first thing that we just kind of stripped from the bottom and just revamped completely. How we did things in there. And so, like I said, man, those kids ate it up, man, and we were able to go 12-1 that first year. Had some really good ball games, really tight, really close ball games, but those kids bought in and ate up everything that we fed them, and we were able to kind of get off to a really good start. And so, fast forward to last year, first year won the region and had some success, and we're like, okay, well we gotta kind of build it, because now these kids, they're getting a little bit more attention than probably what they're used to, just because now, quarterfinal appearance, had a good year. Now, how are we going to handle that? And none of that matters going into the next year. That's kind of the part that, is crazy and fun about this coaching profession, man. Every year is like a new puzzle that you got to put together, and that, success doesn't linger over. You gotta kind of earn it. So last year we were able to kind of build off of some of that, and obviously with the classifications and the regions, being realigned, it put us in a new region. So it was kind of new territory to kind of try to see how we can maneuver through. And like I said, man, our kids, we were able to win the region last year, finished 9-4, and 9-3, and got put out in the second round by Cambridge, a really good Cambridge team. But I say all that to say that the focus here has been establishing winning habits on and off the field, attacking the weight room, being where your feet are. I tell these kids all the time, man, people don't forget how you treat them. And so the way you carry yourself in the building, the way you carry yourself away from the facility, like those things are so important, because it actually does linger over into how you play. But, it's a discipline thing. And so, those are kind of some of the cornerstones of how we do things. And we try to tell the kids, like, if you attack today the way you're supposed to and not worry about what's going on, you'll look up and you'll be proud of what you've been able to do over time. But, today's the only day that really matters, because it's the only day that exists. So we try to preach those things, man, and stay on them. I got a staff of great men. I don't know if you know Kelby Watts, but he's a guy that has been around the block a little bit. I tried to hire him when I was at Paulden, actually. He was at Alexander at the time. And, he turned me down the first time. And so when I got the job, he was already on staff. And so I had talked to him about staying. I'm just like, yeah, you can't keep running from me. So we laughed and joked about that. But Coach Watt's a great guy. Kyle Sanders is another guy I was able to bring on. I got a ton of guys. I mentioned Coach Ballou, who's my OC, and I had Coach Thompson that came over with me from Paulden. So, like I said, man, I have been beyond blessed, man, to have some really good men to put in front of our kids. And they all make me look better than what I actually am.
Well, how did spring go for you guys this year?
So, funny story. So my first year, and it's to make sense of why I'm telling you this story. So my first year here, coming from a 6A school, we had always done spring, and then we had always played somebody in the spring. We did that when I was at Paulden. We did that when I was at Hiram. That's just all I knew, right? And so I get the job in January, and I'm looking for anybody to play. I didn't care who it was. I scheduled Wheeler. Coach Love at Wheeler was looking for a game, and so we scheduled them to play. And, we play them on the road, because I'm like, look, I'll go wherever. I don't care. I just want to, we need a spring game because I need to be able to see what we got. And, that was that first year. And so we we go through spring and we're getting ready for the spring game. And, first off, anybody that coaches in Paulden, especially if you've ever been a head coach, that getting buses is difficult, especially to get them on time. And so I was used to being able to get the buses at the earliest, maybe 4:30, maybe 4, if that, and so I put the bus in, for 4. Well, you talking about traffic and getting up to Wheeler from Carrollton and all that stuff. Long story short, man, we arrived at like 7 o'clock. And so you talking about stretch and scrimmage, and plus us being quad A, we have a lot of kids that play multiple sports. And so, when you quad A, 3A, 2A, sometimes spring can be really tough, and so, some of our kids didn't really get a ton of practice. Long story short, man, we went up to Wheeler and got killed. And not only did we get killed, we were late getting there, and it was just talking about a goat rodeo. And so I'm sure everybody was thinking, man, who is this idiot that we've hired? That was the first showing, and so from that point I said, look, we're going to do inter squad scrimmage from this point moving on. We're not traveling, and so for the last 2 years, we've done inter squad, and we've really liked kind of how that's gone. We make it fun, and we draft 2 teams, and we try to put something on the line, and we try to build it to be a big deal. And, we don't charge admission. We let people come and, come for free. And we try to make it kind of almost like a little bit of a homecoming / come get a preview type deal. And we had a good spring this year. We graduated 8 kids off the defense. So it was, trying to figure out some pieces and try to see who can do what and, build on those.
Hey, it's Bubba Wallace from 2311 Racing. You know what feels like forever? Sitting on a plane waiting for takeoff. Good thing I've got Chumba Casino. With daily boost and social casino games on tap, this is the kind of fun that makes time fly. Why not turbocharge your downtime? Play now at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Those fundamental things, is kind of always our goal in the spring. And so, last 2 springs have been much better than that first debacle that we had going down to Wheeler. But that's one of those things you look back at now and you can kind of laugh at. But we don't have the numbers to do it the way a lot of guys do it. Coming from 6A, where I was coming from.
Oh no, Coach, I hate spring. I hate it.
Right.
Because I've always been at smaller schools normally, and by the time you get all the stuff out, you got kids playing baseball, running track, playing golf, doing whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean it's good. Your very first year is good because you need to, you need to figure out some stuff, but. To play in the game, and everybody's like, I mean, I remember when we first started doing that, all the older guys were like, this is going to be great. We're going to get to play a game. And I was like, I still don't like it. I mean, it's 10 days. And now, we get to do OTAs all summer and all this other stuff we get to do. I really don't see why you need to have a spring.
Right. Yeah. Look, you're spot on. And I'll tell you, like, the more and more I kind of learn, like, I don't even even if I were at a bigger school, I think I would still do inter squad. Like I think when you go and you schedule somebody to play, I think there's a couple things that you just got to really pay attention to. One, you kind of got to play somebody that you trust and know that, look, that guy's not trying to just get a win.
Yeah,
you know, like
it's a spring scrimmage game, for God's sake.
That's right. That's right. And so I would always tell guys, like, look, this is what you're gonna see. This is all we've put in so far. Hey, I'm gonna play my young guys here. But sometimes, and I'm not saying that anybody has done this that I played. I just know that what you run into sometimes is that you'll get a guy that kind of needs a win for his community and for his school.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they're pushing for a win. And while you're just trying to get better and see what you got, but then you go into the summer, let's just say you get blown out. Well, then your kids kind of limp into the summer feeling like, man, this is going to be a long year, even though that's no inkling of what your year is going to be like. But we're talking about kids now.
Right.
And so that's how they think. Or let's say you blow somebody out. Well, then you have this false sense of how good you really are going into the summer. And so you spot on, man. I think the spring has to be about fundamentals, skill development, teaching. Because at the end of the day, man, the games, I've heard a lot of guys say it, and it's true. It still comes down to blocking and tackling. So you better be working those things and developing that in your team, in the spring. And that's really the only reason we do it. I mean, literally.
Yeah, I wouldn't be averse to taking the varsity kids and making them run spring practice for the rising
right.
rookies. Make it like a rookie camp,
Right.
Because, those are the ones that are going to get the most out of it anyway.
That's exactly
And then
right.
your older kids kind of showing you that what they know.
They know their stuff.
Use it like
That's
a skull
right.
session for them and let them,
Yep.
Go through the drills with supervision, obviously. But,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that does that. I was just had that thought. I was like,
Right.
that probably wouldn't be bad. But I'm like you, man. You get the wrong bunch over there and you're like, all right, third series, I'm going to put my babies out there. And you look out there and you drive it down to the 5 and they put their dudes out there because they don't want you to score. And you're like, come on, man.
Right. But there's nothing you can really do about it.
Yeah, you ain't even running the scoreboard. Like, you ain't even keeping a score. You're like,
right,
dude.
Right.
It's practice with uniforms on.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I'm sure, for
and
guys listening, that's happened. That's right.
Oh,
it's happened.
It happens.
And so you're just like, really?
I think you're on the right track, though, with keeping it in-house. And plus, I'd like your idea, too. I think that's great of not charging admission, not charging detergent or drinks or whatever. Just y'all come out and see.
We do that now.
Well, yeah.
Well, we do that, but we say it's a donation. Like, look,
right.
We're not going to turn anybody away.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm telling you, man, Chris, we've done that for 2 years, and it has been awesome. And like you said, it's a chance for us to really, like, those young kids, they get more reps probably than they will the entire year during the spring.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't force our older guys to double dip. And what I mean by that is if they're running track and they're still competing at sectionals and at region, at state, like, I don't have them practicing football on top of that. Like, I have them come out, put a helmet on, jersey on, and get mental reps. But I want them competing and focusing on going to try to, win a state title in their event, in track, or go try to PR. Like that. I don't double dip them. So it allows us to really, really work young guys. And also, when you split the team up inter squad, it forces us to build depth. Because you got to put 11v11 out there. And so those kids get reps. And when those kids get reps, they're engaged. And when you got kids engaged, that makes for a good locker room. You make for a good locker room consistently, and you're going to have a good program. So it's like a trickle effect all the way down on why we do spring and the way we do off spring,
Great. I love it.
We'll do it that way from this point on.
I love hearing somebody openly say, I don't care what the rest of y'all do. I do what's best for me and mine, and then actually do it. Because that's what you got to do. Because ultimately, 100%. Nobody else matters.
Right. That's right.
And
every place is different,
Right. Absolutely. I mean, what's best for your kids, and what they need, you got to be the thermostat for those
Right.
kids in that program, and getting them where they need to be, and where you want them to go, and where they
Right.
want to go. And I think that's awesome. I think that's a great idea. So what you guys got on tap for the summer? Y'all OTA and 7-on-7 it starting up next week?
We are.
Or?
We are. So, this is the first off season where we feel like we've kind of found our off season formula, as far as like, when we do what we do and how we do it. But as far as summer, we'll go 3 days a week. We go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday instead of the traditional Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. I like to give the coaches and the kids a long weekend through the month of June, so they get Friday through Monday. Because my biggest thing is if we're gonna play when we want to play, this thing is gonna be a grind. So I don't need them burnt out come August. So we go 3 days a week in June. We always go to Georgia every year, so we'll go compete there at their 7-on-7. We got a couple other things lined up, and then we do something pretty cool with our middle school program. Every Tuesday in June, we do what we call a mixed day, and that's where we're going to bring up our rising 8th and rising 7th graders, and it's basically a joint practice. I've kind of played with different things with our middle school. And one of our focal points this off season was to get a little bit more alignment with those guys. And so we've always been aligned and always have done things, but we're just trying to find ways to increase and improve it. And so we'll bring them up on Tuesdays. We'll have, we'll be, we won't lift together. They'll lift in the separate weight room that we have here at Central, while we're lifting down at the field house, and then we'll hit the field at the same time and do some things. We got a big patty camp that we'll host, that we host every year at the end of June. I'm excited about this year's. Last year we did it for the first time, and we had 4 teams. It was us, Troup County, Trinity Christian, and New Manchester. Patty camp, 2-day patty camp, straight business. I don't charge anybody to come here. At the end of the day, like we want to get better, and so we'll do that. And this year we've grown it to 9 teams, and so now we have 9 teams all together that'll be here, and so we're excited about that. And then that'll kind of catapult us into that second dead week, and then when we get back in July is when we crank it up, and then we'll go 4 days a week. Then we'll go Monday through Thursday, and then we always go at least for the last 2 years. Well, we went last year, and we're going to do it again this year. We'll go to FCA camp, and I've always been, I used to be kind of skeptical about FCA camp, not for the reason of, we're faith-based, man. I pray over our team every day, and I ain't talking just the Lord's Prayer. Like we pray, and we do something called a 12th man Bible study every single week throughout the year. My skepticism for FCA was not necessarily that piece. It was just simply the football piece. And I felt like, man, we're not going to get enough football, but when I tell you, man, we went last year, and just the camaraderie, the team building, the seeing kids give their life to God, and us being able to have some fellowship time. I heard you use the word skull session. We actually call our character ed series skull sessions too. Stole that from Georgia. So we get a chance to kind of do some special things during that time. So like that's kind of like our, super important, 3 days of the summer right there. And luckily it's right here in town at West Georgia, but I still make them stay overnight and kind of stay and sleep together and all that stuff. Coaches, I make them stay, and it went really well last year. So we feel like we're gonna keep doing that as long as we can do it. And then we do a big team bonding event. I'll take them off campus somewhere, and we'll do something. For the last 2 years, we took the team to go play paintball, and it's kind of my reward to them for a successful summer. And we usually do that right before acclimation. And then once acclimation hits, we're ready to roll. So,
well, that's awesome, Coach. It absolutely sounds like you've got Central headed back to the mid-'80s again with the success that you've had those first 2 years, and who better to do it than an alumni in Umbrah Brown. You've done such a great job there your first 2 years, and I can't wait to see what the Lions put out on the field this year. Thanks for being on with us and sharing your program with us today.
Man, I appreciate it, Chris. It was an easy yes for me, man. I think what you've done with this platform is really needed. I think a lot of guys listen and learn, and like you said, really, sometimes it's just good to get that affirmation, to hear other people's stories, and know that, man, we all come from different backgrounds and different ways, but at the end of the day, we all still deal with the same problems. So,
absolutely.
I appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Coach.
Appreciate it, bye.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Another checkered flag for the books. Time to celebrate with Chumba. Jump in at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.